Yes, perfect. Jazakallah khair, sis, for saving the day. Right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, sisters. We're now ready to start. Apologies for the delay, but that has allowed a few more of you to join us. And today we have a very special session in that we're introducing a new coach to you, to Sister Seeking Salam. Sister Tahmina has been training with me for over a year and a half, I think now. And so we've wanted to introduce her to Sister Seeking Salam so that she may share the wisdom of knowledge and experience that she has gained along the way in her life with all of you. The topic that that she's picked today to discuss with you is her journey with living with physical pain and her journey through that pain to finding Allah. So I don't want to keep her any longer. I'll hand her over to you, inshallah, and we'll hear her stories, and then we'll break out into the breakout rooms, and all of us can kind of have a chat between us and share what we've gained from it and our own experiences. So I'll hand over to Sister Tahmina.
Okay. Jazakumullah khairan, Mina. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. I'll start with a dua, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل الله فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. I want to start, inshallah, with my journey with this journey that started 5 years ago. When I had a car accident, and it was a very major impact on the car. Immediately written off, and 7 of us in the car, subhanAllah, children, cousins, everyone. So it was a moment of shock, impact, and what went through me at that time, obviously I didn't realize how much of an impact it had on me until about a few days later, when I found myself going through a massive whiplash. And as days went by, I found myself more incapable of catching up physically. Like my pains would increase. And subhanAllah, from this, it just developed more and more. And I thought it will decrease, but it didn't. And through that experience of mine, what was happening was I wasn't able to stay on top of my mind was not going in the same pace as how I could go physically. So I was very used to the kind of lifestyle where everything was on the go. I could do everything, cooking, cleaning, everything, multitasking, on the go. SubhanAllah, I was doing everything that I thought, I was pushing myself to limits, even though I didn't feel it. But alhamdulillah, I had that kind of, I call it superpower, like a superpower. But what actually happened to me at that time, when the post-accident, when that, a van hit me and that was it, Allah caused me to slow down. It was a moment when I had to slow down. And that's when I realized, I was going so fast. I was going so fast forward in my life. I was doing, taking the children out, doing this, doing that. It was like I was, in a car that was going at 70 constantly on the motorway and trying to go higher if I could. But I wasn't slowing down. I wasn't changing lanes. I wanted to stay on that fast lane all that time. And when Allah SWT pulled me over and put me to this slow lane, I found it very difficult. I was watching everything go past me so fast. Everyone go past me as they would. And I didn't I was finding that very difficult to take. Although I was really, grateful, alhamdulillah, that Allah's given me the health. I was still alive. Nobody was majorly injured, But I did feel like I was mentally beating myself up a lot. And I wasn't ready to change my perspective. I wasn't ready to improvise. I was afraid to ask for help when I needed to. I was so used to being the one giving help or, being there for everyone. I considered myself, I labeled myself as the giver, the person who everyone would kind of say, oh, Tahmina, this problem or this is happening. I wanted to be that person. I've always been that person. So when I had to ask and take, subhanAllah, it was just something that initially at that time, I just felt like myself, I was putting pressure on myself, overburdening myself, pushing myself, and then falling into this, because the pain was getting worse every time I overburdened myself. I wasn't seeing Allah in that moment. I wasn't seeing that Allah was telling me that, hold on a minute, Tahmina, your body needs you. It's got a right over you. And I wasn't ready to accept that. And that's where the problem was. The problem wasn't that I had slowed down. The problem wasn't that I was in pain. The problem was that I wasn't willing to accept that I was not able to do the things that I was able to do until only a few weeks later, or a few weeks earlier, a few months earlier. And through this, actually, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened other doors for me. It was so beautiful. And a lot of the time, pain is not something that anybody, none of us want to embrace pain. But when we submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we accept, and when I met Amina the first time 2.5 years ago, subhanAllah, when I spoke to her, this was the thing that I was accepting it. But then at the same time, I wasn't fully submitting with. When I would feel that pain so much, and I was able to, just take my kids to the park just because I felt like it, because I was still in too much pain, and when I come back, I would be in more pain. I was building up on that. And alhamdulillah, when you come back to Allah, when you bring it all back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not burden a soul more than it can bear. And what was I doing? I was overburdening myself. Mentally, I was beating myself up. I want to take my kids to the park, and I can't do it. And I was telling myself this. So I was thinking things so much, and my body was saying, please go to sleep, please lie down, please rest. And I was fighting it. But subhanAllah, the moment I learned to accept, I found peace. The moment I've realized that it's such a simple thing to do, was to accept that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not given me duties beyond my measure, beyond my capacity, and I can only do what I can to the best of my ability and not to overburden myself. That was it. And through pain and connecting with Allah, even though I was in pain, when I connect with Allah, I don't feel the depth of that pain. It's like, I don't know if any of the sisters have sciatica or anything. It's like nerve pain. It's like a toothache, but in different areas. But having a toothache, subhanAllah, even in that when you have like a toothache, it's really, really painful. But try connecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at that moment and feeling like, Allah, you're the one who gave me pain. And then you find the peace, because with Allah bi dhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. Isn't it with the zikr of Allah that our hearts find peace, security, tranquility? So even that pain, that, all of that, subhanAllah, over the years, has been up and down, up and down. But even through that pain, we've been able to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we can do that. And sometimes that pain gives us the opportunity to be closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Maybe I was going so fast in my life that I was doing all the do's, but I wasn't just sitting down and being myself, reading a book as much as I'd like to, or opening a book of knowledge or revising on them as much. And because I couldn't be as active, I was able to sit back down sometimes and do these things more often. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened other doors. So it's not the end, that when something happens, when we accept, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens doors, and it's an opportunity for us. And that's what I have learned through my journey, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will test us through so many things. And when we accept and we submit to Him, then we will surely see the fruits of that. And there's a Quranic ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Baqarah, ayah 155, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. And He will most certainly try you, and with somewhat fear and hunger and loss of property and lives and fruits, and give good news to the patient. For me, my test was health. I would fear that now that my health is not the 110% I wanted it to be, I was afraid of not being something that I wanted to be. Allah had given me this. And it all went back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for me, it was fear of future, that I will not be able to do so many things, but the future is in Allah's hands. Going back to Allah, future is in Allah's hands. I have to do my best, leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Tahmina. SubhanAllah, I think you captured so many of the struggles that we have, whether it's by a serious illness or an illness for a moment, but when it's almost like our mind cannot keep up with our bodies. Or yes, exactly that. That's happened to me as well. It's like you feel like you can do so much, you still want to be able to do so much, but your body doesn't want to go with you. It's not accepting what you want to do, and that's a real battle that we struggle with, especially women. Everyone's a doer. Everyone has a lot to do. So I don't want to say especially women. It's all of us. When you feel like you can't do your role and the things you want to do and need to do, especially when others are relying on you, that becomes so difficult to cope with. And as you said, the key was acceptance of what your body could do. When we can accept, we can align ourselves, with mind and our body together with what Allah wants from us. Because what I heard, what you were saying there so beautifully, was you wanted to do so much, but actually you realized perhaps Allah wanted you to recognize that your body was an amana too. And you yourself had rights, and you were not giving yourself those rights. So for whatever trials we go through, the different lessons that come to us when we reflect are going to be unique to each and every one of us. So the one lesson that I may take may be different from you. I realized when I went through, I had reactive arthritis and I couldn't do anything for a while. What I really struggled with there was I was very uncomfortable with relying on others. And I felt agitated if I was asking for help and then I wasn't getting the help in the way I wanted it. So for me, there was something to come from that I needed to reflect on. And so I think when we go through these trials, there's so much growth, there's so much learning. But if we look for Allah in it, we find balance balance in ourselves, balance in our lives, balance in our relationships. And I think that's what you found after finding Allah. Is that right, Tahmina?
Exactly, Amina. And it's really fun, isn't it? Because we feel like we have Allah, we have a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but in that time when you're really feeling down and you don't realize that you don't have the acceptance. And then when you've found that moment, you think, subhanAllah, wow, I had it all along. I just didn't know how to deepen that. It's like I was saying, that it took the edge off the pain. The pain wouldn't go away, but you can like mentally work with it a little bit more better. Alhamdulillah. The focus on it just goes away because you know you've got Allah. You know this is the beauty of what you're going through is because you're with Allah, and that's it. It just everything else just doesn't feel as important anymore.
And as you said, even the pain, you didn't focus on it as much. So though it was still there and you were always living with it, when you didn't focus on what your body couldn't do and you didn't focus on the pain, it was almost more bearable.
Definitely. And I didn't need a validation from anybody that I'm in pain. Like I didn't need everyone to know I was in pain or that I'm suffering, because that's between me and Allah. Allah knows. So I don't need anybody to kind of acknowledge it. You see, it's like that connection, that's it. Nobody else in the house, nobody in the family really needs to know unless I need them to know. And that was the beauty of it, that I didn't feel dependent on anyone. Like, didn't feel like I needed to complain to anyone or anything. Alhamdulillah, Allah, you know. That's
Alhamdulillah. And also, it is something that is something that is quite tricky, in that when we're in pain, anyone that's looking to us on the outside, one doesn't know how bad the pain is or even knows you're in pain. It's a very much something between you and Allah. But we can sometimes feel frustrated when people don't realize how bad we're suffering or how bad the pain is. And yet it's really not obvious unless you're not walking straight or sitting straight. It can be very, like for you, Tahmina, when I used to meet you, at the events, I couldn't tell you were in pain. Mashallah, you're always smiling, but you see what I mean? There's certain pains that are hidden from everyone, just like fasting is hidden from people. And people can't tell, but it allows you to keep that. It does allow, it is only between you and Allah, like only Allah knows.
exactly.
SubhanAllah. So, sisters, I hope that, and I see from the discussions, this is bringing up, a few reflections for each of you. What I suggest we do is for the next 15 minutes, for those who are still able to stay on, to break out into small rooms of 4 and 5, which I'll put everyone in. And then, we can come back and share the reflections from the group. Let's do that, inshallah, and have a chat amongst yourself. What did this bring up for you? There's physical pain. There's also, that we're particularly talking about here. There's, your mind catching up with your body, and there's a little one who's suddenly come out of the pool wet. So there's a lot that has come up. So let's have a chat, inshallah. Let's break out into rooms. Bismillah. Okay, you just have to click join, ladies. Assalamu alaikum, ladies. I know. know what to do there. Sorry. Okay. So I think we're slowly bringing everyone back into the room. So just to take a few more minutes for sisters who have come back to the room, would anyone like to share what they discussed in their in the small rooms you're in? What did you what did you see or hear from each other that you want to share? Would anyone like to maybe unmute themselves and share? Should we do it that way? Or put in the chat box what you heard and what was helpful and what's helped you, and have you any questions for Tahmina?
Assalamu alaikum. I was actually in
Waalaikumsalam.
a room with Tahmina and two other sisters. We all had our own stories regarding this, but we all came back to the fact that realizing that our body is an amana, that realizing deeply actually slowed us down. And what Sister Tahmina said about being on the fast lane and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling us we need to slow down, we don't accept it. Sometimes we don't see what's in front of us. But once we realize that, it helped us slow us down. And I think it's so important that we accept that we can't pour from an empty pot. We need to look after ourselves, and our body is an amana for a reason. And for all of us, that was a big thing.
Yeah, like you hear it, but to really see it to the point where you stop taking on more and you stop pressurizing yourself to do more. I think that's when you see it quite deeply, right?
I think it was a case of like a lot of us, we were busy for the sake of being busy and not realizing it, because that's become what's normal or something, and
or expected, or what we
it
believe
was
we should be
expected.
doing.
And I think, and that's the other thing. We have a belief that we should be busy, we should be doing X, Y, and Z, and then we take on board other people's belief that we should be doing more, or their expectations of who we should be, and then that takes us away from Allah. Because when we're looking outside, and then we just think, oh, we blame our surroundings. But when you go back inside, reflect on yourself, turn yourself back to Allah, you realize Allah's not burdening us, we're burdening ourselves. And when you have that realization, it just stops you, it slows you down. That's what you need to do, because that's what ultimately Allah is telling you to do, to slow down.
Yeah, it's like when you keep going, eventually you get a cold. It's like you're forced to stop.
Yeah, that's exactly what we talked about.
Yeah, one of the sisters mentioned, I think, in the session, that how Ramadan was, so she fast lane in Ramadan all the way, and then after Ramadan she could literally collapsed. She couldn't go anymore. She fell unwell. So we're not supposed to be. Our body's not made to go on overload and then collapse. We're meant to go at a steady pace. And when we do that to ourselves, we're harming ourselves.
And when it does get intense, we need to rest. Well, sometimes we don't take the signal to rest.
And another thing that that came to mind was, why are we doing this to ourselves? It's because we want to live up to the expectations of others, the belief that if we do this, and this, then so-and-so will be happy with us, and we want to please everyone. But in that moment, we've actually left Allah out of the equation. And then when we realize, when we do something for Allah, then everyone will eventually be happy with you. If you're doing it for the world, then where's Allah in that? So we have to remember that first, when we please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's all we need. And eventually, if those people who we want to please, they're not going to be pleased with us, with whatever we do, because our way and their way is going to be different. I might cook 10, but from that 10, 4 might not be the way somebody wanted it. It's like, oh, a little bit too much salt, too much chili, whatever.
Can't believe you used to cook 10 curries. My mum laughs because in our culture there was always a salad that goes with the meal, but I can never get round to doing the salad because I'm so tired by the time I've done the meal. She's always like, where's the salad? you know. So to cook 10 curries, subhanAllah, that would have been a lot on yourself and your body. And
It's just a
it's
very
hard.
cultural thing. It wasn't expected from me in that sense. Like I just automatically thought it was expected from me. So when I cut down, Mina, it wasn't that anybody had a heart attack or anyone said that, you know what, this is world's end. Nothing happened, and I was in shock because nothing happened. That's the worst thing about it, is like when you accept that your body can't take it anymore, and then you realize actually the people around you are not expecting it from you. It's you who's made that belief that it's expected from you. I believed that I had to do it because I've seen my mum do it, my in-laws do it, I've seen my aunties do it. I've seen this is like a very family-oriented thing. So I have to do it. But when I broke away from that, it was simple.
And if you don't, then you would be a failure.
And there was no failure. Even if, I didn't do it anymore. I don't do it anymore. But no one is, even if they're judging me, it doesn't matter. And when you've taken that belief away, I have to do it. Alhamdulillah, it makes things so much more easier. We just don't have to live up to people's expectations, as long as you know that, can I answer to Allah about this? Can I say to Allah, oh Allah, I tried my best, 100% with my heart, sincere heart. And when I put myself in that position, then I can do something. Alhamdulillah. And I find it's like a total different concept then. It's not about people, it's about Allah.
SubhanAllah, it's so true. Sister Fatima says 10 curries. I know that story too well. I think at this point I should ask for Mida to share her samosa story because it's turning into something else here. But Sister Asmina said, we get too busy thinking about the speed of how we do things and miss looking in the direction of Allah. The pain is a means of us waking up to that greater realization. SubhanAllah. Yeah, it's because we're looking in the wrong direction. SubhanAllah. Mida, did you want to share something?
I was just typing away. So every year.
Don't type, share.
So every year I would have to make a whole selection of frozen things for Ramadan and freeze it. And my logic behind it was then, obviously in Ramadan then I don't need to be so busy doing that. But so much thought would go into it that I would get tired just days beforehand thinking about it, and I would make like thousands. This is literally, and you'd go till the next Eid as well. And I remember one occasion, my friend who's really close to me walking in, and she walked in all innocently, and I was like, "Oh yes, you can help me now." So we sat down, and it went on for like 3-4 hours, and by the end of it, she regretted, like, why did I, come to visit you now? Because it's so long to make those samosas. And every year I'll say to her, "Oh, you need to come down," like without realizing, and like innocently come down, and I'll, get you to make my samosas for me. But do you know, the funny thing is, now that I've dropped that thinking, this year round, I was actually able to make the samosas, and I was able to do it in one go. I didn't have to leave, the meat or whatever it is in the fridge and over days do it. I was able to just do it without stressing about it so much, like, because I didn't have that stress about it. It was just easier to do. So sometimes I think even when a task is hard to do, we add that layer of worry on top of it, and when we do that, we get tired even before we've done it. When you take that away, it is actually manageable then. So yeah, I'm still trying to prepare for Ramadan. But that was, I suppose, now when I look at Ramadan, I'm not just preparing with food, I'm preparing in other ways, because you can prepare with food, but that's still not gonna, the best way to prepare is, as we know, spiritually and mentally prepare for it, rather than cooking and thinking that's going to help you.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it makes me laugh, but many of my clients, when they join me, they're at the point of making 10 or 8, 7 plates of curries, and then only when towards the end when they're making one, I'm like, oh, I should have come to dinner when you were making 10. Sister Nazma says, just wondering, how many people ate the 10 curries? That's a good question, Tahmina.
On average, depending on who came. So
so it was, you cooked for anyone who was going to come?
Yeah, it was just, and I would always forget the salad because that was the last thing, and I'd collapse by then. So if I was lucky, if anyone was lucky, they'd get the salad as well. No, it was usually because we have fish, we have the sides, you have the vegetable, and you have the little fish and the big fish. It's amounted to 10 in the end anyway. So even if you planned 6 and 8 or 7, it just amounted that something else would come up, like, oh, I have to make something else to go with this, complement it. It was very nice. Back then, we did used to enjoy it, making those curries and eating it. And then we'd dish it out as well. So that was one of the cultural things we do as well. It's like, it's nice to give it out as well. So you make and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like all 10 dishes on the spot. You dish it out and you have it the next day, or you'll have some of the leftovers. But it's just a lot because of the way we were doing it. It was too much.
Yes. And one sister was saying she thought that you said you'd cook 10 curries every day. And I remember you saying it was every other day, but still every other day was pretty tough on you.
Oh, we wouldn't do it every day. So if it was 10 curries every day, subhanAllah, I don't think, I'd be out of the kitchen at all. But, subhanAllah, it was something like more of like a guest thing, or we do about at least 4 or 5 for the home regularly. But when guests came, it would be like 10 dishes and stuff. And it's a bit too much, I think. Even Islamically, as Muslims, we have to consider how much should we give. Is this something that Prophet ﷺ would approve of? Is this how he ate or how he served his guests? And then that's like enough to answer all the questions, like not even our body, it's whether it is appropriate, if this is meant to be the way. If this is
and when we bring it back to the Quran and Sunnah, that's when we will find the balance, kind of between pleasing others or just pleasing ourselves and doing nothing, for example, kind of just completely stopping. And a balance will always come when you bring the Quran and Sunnah into what you're doing. Sister Asmina said, there's a deeper wisdom for the pain that exists, and that the pains are messengers for us. Sister Nazmira said, I think Allah gives us signs to slow down, but when we don't listen to them, He brings us upon a harder test, i.e. the pain that almost forces us to slow down. And we do this to ourselves because we lose sight of Allah. Sister Nadia said when she couldn't cook, her son started to cook. And in that she realized actually everyone can help out and everyone can do it. We almost think we're the only ones that can do it. And Sister Nazma says excess of anything is bad. Very true, sis. Right, I think Sister Aliha, unmuted herself, or did anyone else want to speak and share anything before or ask any questions before we draw it to an end? Oh, Sister Mary, would you like to share?
Assalamu alaikum, sisters. So mine's is
Walaikum salam.
very short group, just me and I think Sister Shaki. But yeah, just sharing about how even though I'd had endometriosis for so long, I think it's been a journey in the sense that it's taken me a really long time to realize that the way it's again the accountability that the fact that my body has rights over me, that I think a lot of the time we end up just eating really unconsciously, not taking not kind of looking at, okay, what are we eating, what does it contain, is it good for us, is it healthy? And I think the thing is all of these tests with every kind of pain is, like you said, Sister Amina, that it's bringing everything back to the Quran and Sunnah, because I did like the point that Sister Tahmina said about if in the Prophet ﷺ's time, they would be very hospitable, but they wouldn't be cooking like 10 dishes or putting so much pressure on themselves to cook really extravagantly. So I think it's kind of like bringing us all back to the main thing, that keep it simple, and traditional, in the sense that, even with my endometriosis, yes, I have to make changes to my diet, but the more I make it about myself, the harder I will make it for whereas if I do it along with dua and action as well, then it'll be better manageable. So even if I do slip, I'm not going completely off the bandwagon thinking, right, this is never going to change. But I'm just being consistent with my dua, but also I'm doing things on my end to make it better. So again, putting the focus back on Allah rather than what I'm going through and the pain kind of has helped me to manage better.
Jazakallah khair, sis, for sharing that. Yes, absolutely, very, very true. Anyone else want to add anything? One sister's asked, is physical pain related to trauma, like the way when you've been brought up or the things you've tolerated in life? There is, sister, definitely, it is all connected. So our spiritual connection, our psychology, how we think and feel, and our physical body, it's all connected. So when we have gone through various experiences in life, how we're processing, how we're dealing with it, how we, like for example, some, like my mom, she just keeps it in. She doesn't talk about it. She doesn't cry. She bottles it up. And I say to her, don't do that, because that energy, that tension is bottling up somewhere. And so there is very much a link between all three: our spiritual connection, our psychological connection, and our physical connection, our physical body. And so, even in a trial, if we can find Allah in it, it will have a positive impact. When we can accept and we can seek Allah and seek His help, as we've been discussing, it will have a positive impact psychologically. You'll feel at peace, your mind will be calmer when you accepted the test, but also your body, it can heal, etc. But when struggling with that, then we'll find that spiritually we feel disconnected from Allah. Psychologically, we're feeling very busy, very lost, very absent-minded. We're not present. We feel that heaviness of the mind, but you will also feel it in your body. Dr. Amina, did you want to add something here? Are you able to speak? I know you're at work.
Sorry, sister. So how would you deal with that?
In the coaching that we do, and depending on what the symptom is, and
bottling up. How do you deal with something like this?
Well, the thing is, what happens is what we're bottling up is a belief about what that means. So, for example, if when I've known that I've not been able to do things in the past, the belief I had was I can't rely on anyone. Everything is on me. And what I started feeling was pain on my shoulders, feeling like I was carrying the weight of the world. But I started physically getting that pain. But when I kind of talked about it and I reflected, and in coaching, that's what we help you to do. We kind of deal with the belief behind the symptoms. You can start to feel the ease because you suddenly realize, well, that's not the case. Actually, I can rely on Allah. Yeah, I'm not carrying it all on my shoulders. So that belief that we have, sometimes very often, it's when we're not seeing Allah in it.
Yeah. So rely on Allah.
Relying on Allah, or sometimes it might be, we might start feeling, why did Allah do this to me? Why is Allah putting me through this, for example? So that might not be a case of relying on Allah. In that case, it might be about actually realizing you're not alone. And there was good in that trial that you went through. Sometimes it's not always obvious, but each trial that comes to us is an opportunity for us, one, to reflect on, my life. Am I doing everything in my life in the way that's most pleasing to Allah? Not most, like, am I being disobedient in anything? Every trial gives you an opportunity to do that. Like, it's come to you for a reason. So even a trial where somebody might have done something, so the problem is with someone else, but it still touches you, it still impacts you, you feel that that trial, that's still touching you because Allah has willed for it to touch you. It's still a trial for you. And in each trial, we can often blame the person, or we can blame the condition, or we can blame something. But when we really look towards ourselves and ask ourselves, what is it that I can gain from this trial? is there a part of my life where I am being disobedient? Or is there a part in my life where I'm neglecting my duties towards Allah? Or is there a part in my, in my life where actually this will strengthen my iman, my belief in Allah? Yes, you know what? I went through that trial and that brought me closer to Allah. You see, so trials are there for us to reflect upon and grow from and improve upon. But when we're not doing that process, but we get caught in the blaming or the victim mentality sometimes, like, or not being able to accept it, then it impacts our body as well as our mind.
Subhanallah.
Does that resonate, sis, with you?
That's very beautifully said. Subhanallah. Thank you. Jazakallah khair. That's very beautifully said.
I'm glad that alhamdulillah, may Allah bless us all to be able to find him through all of our trials, because the longer that we delay that process, the more we suffer.
Yep.
And sometimes the time that we realize we're suffering is actually once we're feeling the symptoms. You know, a while ago, there was something that happened in my family and it was bothering me, but I was still dealing with the situation until I realized my reactive arthritis was coming back, my eczema was coming back. And that's when I realized, oh my God, that's actually affecting me. You know, it's having an impact on me. And I hadn't realized because I was still in doing mode.
That's what I do most of the time. I don't realize that something's bothering me until I fall ill. I can't identify what's bothering me. I think I'm not stressed. I think things are not bothering me. I really hide it.
Yeah. But when I stopped to understand how I was, what I was seeing, you know, how I was processing the whole event, I very much felt like a victim in the situation. I very much felt like I was being blamed, etc. And that belief was really affecting my body. That's when I realized it. However, that belief didn't bring Allah into it, because with Allah, I'm never a victim. With Allah, this is an opportunity for me to grow closer to him and grow in myself. So how could I be a victim?
So it is not a belief to be close to Allah. That's so nice. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. Jazakallah khair. Allahu Akbar.
Alhamdulillah, I'm glad that's helped. We have Sister Shakti that wants to say some things. Shall we come to you, sis, before we close? I'm conscious of the time. We're at an hour now. Walaikum salam, sis.
Okay, so I'm just picking up when a sister, sorry, I forget her name, who asked, how can you get someone to talk about a problem versus bottling it up? Whether it's you're trying to get a person to speak or whether it's yourself, what I would do is challenge the story that the individual is telling herself or that you yourself are telling yourself, because to be in the victim mode requires a story that we've told ourselves again and again and again, so much so that we believe it. And because we've believed it, we then manifest it verbally, and then it comes out in our state and our physical well-being. And to challenge that story, it really goes back to a deeper questioning of the mind and asking very deep, thought-provoking and reflective questions.
Very much. And that is the nature of coaching, right? That's exactly what we're doing. We're taking it to self-reflection and looking at your own journey with Allah and your own trial with Allah, you know, in the situation, you know, taking away, you know, yes, the trial is going on. Yes, there are circumstances. Yes, people are behaving in a certain way. But when you can step back and almost zoom out to find you and Allah in that trial, you can find peace in it. And as you say, when we're not at peace with it, it's because there is a story that we're seeing through, but that story is always coming from the lens of our belief. Like I believe that when this happens, we shouldn't behave that way. You know, people should apologize as soon as they do something. You know, people shouldn't be unkind. I'm not unkind. So we have beliefs, and it's upon those beliefs that the stories are created. So very much one of the approach of our coaching in Sister Seeking Salam is to go to the belief. That is the root knot that ties all of our stories together. Jazakallah khair, sister. Sister Meru, you had one more thing to say?
Assalamu alaikum. Sorry, just a very quick point. Just when you were
Walaikum
talking
salam.
about victim mentality. I've had a realization quite recently, and I'm just thinking with everything pointing back to the Quran and Sunnah. I think when we feel like we can recognize that, okay, I'm having festering a victim mentality. I find that when you go back to the Quran and the Sunnah and you see the stories, what you'll find that the narrative is written in such a way where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala isn't portraying the prophets, and that they're not being portrayed as victims, basically. And I think that's from where we get our healing and our way of change, because when we see the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written, the Quran, the way it's written, it's not a sense of you feel sorry for the prophets. In that sense, you kind of get strength from what they endured. And that I find can sometimes help, because even in the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he went through so many trials, but we learned that it was never about him playing the victim card or anything like that. And that can sometimes, I find, helps me to kind of come out when I recognize I'm going down that spiral again.
Absolutely, sis. And what happens there is, you see, we have a belief upon which the story was created, right? Like, I should be making 10 curries, because if I'm not going to be good enough daughter-in-law, etc., etc. And then we live our lives according to that belief, and before we know it, we don't even know why we're doing what we're doing. And or something happens to us, and then there's it shouldn't be like this, I shouldn't be in this situation, or people should be helping me, or whatever. And because we're living that belief, we feel like a victim. Our beliefs become our reality. And then what you're saying is, but when we look to the Quran and Sunnah, we find basis for new beliefs, like the prophets, peace be upon them. They were not victims in the way their stories were told. So actually, are trials making us victims? No, they're not. When we can form a new belief, we can drop an old one. Because sometimes it's like we hold two beliefs. Like, I have a belief that, I'm a victim for whatever reason, but at the same time, I have a belief that actually we can grow through our trials, and the two are clashing. So you still feel like the victim. And when we can see kind of the truth behind the belief, the one that isn't aligned with the Quran Sunnah does fall away. So I hope that helps, sisters, gives you some idea of what's behind the victim mentality or the pressure we're putting on ourselves. It's always coming down to a belief we've created, and often when we were young, when we're teenagers, when we were young adults, when we're newly married, we create many beliefs and we live our lives according to those beliefs. And maybe when we formed them, we didn't bring in what Allah wanted from us. Yet we continue living by them. That's our reality. We struggle with them, but we never go back to actually ask, well, actually, do I need to do that? Do I even need to make 10 curries? Do I need to do this? What's Allah going to be pleased with? And that just bypasses all of the victim mentality, that bypasses the story, it bypasses everything. It's the shortcut to actually untying the knot that's the loose around our neck. On that note, I think I'll pass to Sister Tahmina for her closing comments, and then for you to end the session, sis. Is that okay?
That's okay, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you for sharing your story, Tahmina. It's brought a lot of comments up that have been very, very helpful, different directions. But I think it's been a great eye opener and a wonderful, great session for your first session. May Allah reward you and bless you to do more and more for us at Sister Seeking Salam. Ameen.
Alhamdulillah. As everyone was talking, actually, I've something I wanted to also say is, like, it's that fear of dependency. We don't want to feel like other people saying that, oh, I did this for you. It doesn't matter if somebody else has done something for us. Like, I used to always feel afraid that my husband will say to me, what if my husband says, oh, you didn't do this? Alhamdulillah, in the moment, when everything happened, it didn't happen the way I had decided in my head it would happen if I asked for help. It was the other way around, subhanAllah. But, when I couldn't cook, I realized my husband can actually cook if he wanted to, and sometimes better than me. So it's when we give other people a chance that things will change, and we need to change things for ourselves if we want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to change things for us. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if we do not make a change for ourselves, then He will not change anything for us. So we need to be the ones who make that change, and not, if I sit there and complain and my husband doesn't do anything, or so and so my kids don't do anything, but I haven't made a move to change that, I will never see that. I will never see a change. I'll be in the same spot. So I thought I'll just add that in before we end with the dua, inshallah. Okay. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا محمد خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. آمين يا رب العالمين.
آمين.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. آمين. جزاك الله خيرا.
Bismillah.